الله، والصلاة والسلام الأتمان الأكملان على نبي الرحمة رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم نورنا بنور الفهم وأخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم والوهم، ونور أبصارنا بالعلم وافتح علينا فتوح العارفين، واجعلنا يا ربنا من عبادك المجتبين المصطفين الأخيار، واجعلنا ممن لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون.
سنتكلم اليوم عن عدة مواضيع في غاية الأهمية في مجال السلامة والصحة المهنية، وهو مجال يتم من خلاله إعداد السياسات والإجراءات. فنتحدث اليوم إن شاء الله عن خطط الإخلاء وخطط الطوارئ ومجموعة من المعلومات الإثرائية التي تخدم متخصص السلامة والصحة المهنية. تابع وإن شاء الله نتمنى لكم التوفيق.
متطلبات خطة الوقاية من الحريق في المنشآت. يعني الآن نعمل كيس وأكثر حالة بنركز فيها دائما الحريق لأنه متكرر، تمام؟ طيب، يجب أن تكون الخطة مكتوبة بلغة واضحة ومفهومة. يعني ما تيجي تكتب لي خطة مش واضحة، أقول لي والله يا مهندس أنا ما بعرف أكتب خطة طوارئ أو خطة إخلاء. ابحث بالنت خطة حريق، خطة إخلاء، خطة طوارئ، خذ من معلومات من هنا ومن هنا ومن هنا، ترى يطلع لك يعني حاجة واضحة وسهلة، وممكن أنت تكون مبدأ لهذا العمل. وأغلب يعني الخطط الموجودة في الإنترنت يعني عادي مسموح لك أخذ منها ونشرها. أن تبقى الخطة في مكان ظاهر وواضح في داخل المنشأ. لازم الخطة تكون واضحة وظاهرة والكل عارف فيها، متاح مرجعيتها للأفراد والإداريين. يجب على قائد المنشأ ومسؤول السلامة في المنشأ إبلاغ الأفراد بخطر الحريق. لازم يكون ترى في خطر حريق، مخاطر اشتعال عند مباشر العمل في المنشأ لأول مرة. يتم استعراض كافة الإجراءات التي يجب أن تعملها في خطة الوقاية. لازم يتم شرحها. يعني أي موظف جديد أو أنت موظف جديد، المنشأ اللي بتقدم نفسها وبتقدم موظفينها لازم يدخل الموظف يقول أنا ترى في خطر حريق، وأي منشأ معرضة للاحتراق. ما في أي منشأ من أي منشأ، تمام؟ إذا خطر الحريق خطر دائم في جميع المنشآت، سواء بيوت، محطات، سيارات، أي شيء، تمام؟ طيب، إيش تتضمن خطة الوقاية من حمام الحريق؟ قوائم بكافة مخاطر الحريق والتعامل معها، والتخزين الآمن للمواد الخطرة ومصادر الاشتعال، أجهزة التحكم، معدات الحماية من الحريق، سواء كان في مختبر أو في مكان في حفلات أو طلبات معينة. إجراءات للسيطرة على النفايات سريعة الاشتعال. في نفايات ممكن تكون سريعة اشتعال زي مثلا النفايات الطبية، نفايات خطرة مثل في نفايات مثلا زي تخزين ورق أو مستندات، أو مثلا زي الأرشيف. أرشيف منطقة خطرة جدا في ورق، لأن ورق قابل للاشتعال، تمام؟ وسريع في مواد سريعة الاشتعال. إجراءات للصيانة الوقائية ضروري جدا. الصيانة الوقائية مهمة، عشان كذا موضوع الصيانة ضروري يكون بشكل دوري للأجهزة، المعدات، المنتج الحرارة، ذات الحمل الزايد، المكيفات، السخانات، أجهزة الحاسب، المراوح، التدفئة. واسم ووظيفة ورقم جوال كافة الذين لديهم مسؤوليات عن صيانة معدات الإطفاء والإبلاغ والسيطرة على المخاطر. لازم هذه أمور رئيسية تتضمنها خطة الوقاية والحماية من الحريق. واضح إلى الآن؟ نتعمق زيادة، نبدأ نكمل نتعمق زيادة. جميع واضح؟
مشعل واضح يا مشعل؟ كيفك؟ معانا ولا لا؟ يا مشعل كيف امورك؟ تمام. لما تدخل على دائما على الزوم سجل اسمك. تمام، الله يعافيك. يا مشعل شكلك على طريق تمشي. الانترنت بكون، الانترنت شوف لك انترنت ثابت وقف انت.
ركزوا. واضح؟ واضح. تمام. طيب، منع مخاطر الحرائق. جميل، منع مخاطر الحرائق. فهم الحرائق، بدنا نفهم الحريق. ليش نفهم الحريق الآن؟ لأنه لو فهمنا الحريق حنعرف كيف نتعامل معاه ونطفيه. طبعا الحريق والنار مضرات دائما. هل هم لهم ضرر دائم؟ لا. طب نحن بنستخدم الحريق، بنطبخ كل يوم، بنسخن شاي كل يوم فيه. النار والحرارة بنطبخ فيها، بنولع فيها اللي بروح البرد، حطب وجمر، وبسوي شاي على الجمر يعني، وبنشوي. صح؟ يعني نستفيد من النار. يعني ما ممكن والله اقول والله ما ابغى نار. لا، النار مطلوبه. المحركات، النار والحراره والمصادر الحراره مطلوبه. لكن هنا السؤال، هل انا بقدر الغي النار ولا ما بقدر الغي النار؟ يقول والله الغي النار عشان اوقف الاشتعال. عشان كذا التعامل مع الحرائق بالتحكم بها. تمام؟ نتحكم فيها. يعني الان اكثر شيء خطوره انه ايش؟ انا محتاج الشيء هذا ولازم اتعامل معه بحذر. نفس الشيء، يعني انا عارف ان الولد هذا مثلا عمره مثلا 4 سنين 5 سنين ولد ولعاب وكذا. انا عارف انه لعاب ممكن يسبب لي نار، لكن ابغى اتعامل معه، ابغى اعطيه كل شويه حلاوه، ابغى اراضيه. نفس الفكره. ابغى اعرف الان من هي النار ومن هي الحرائق حتى اقدر اتعامل معها. تمام؟ طيب، الحرائق تفاعل كيميائي سريع. يعني التفاعل، شفت لما تدخل مختبر تقول والله اسوي تجربه كيميائيه. هو تفاعل كيميائي سريع ما بين الاكسجين اللي بنتنفسه. شفت الاكسجين في خطر النار انه في اكسجين، مواد قابله للاشتعال، يعني مواد تقبل انها تشتعل زي ورق خشب. ومع الاكسجين لما يتفاعلوا مع بعض بينتج عن اطلاق هذا الحريق حراره وضوء. مش الضوء صح؟ وحراره ولهب. شفت اللهب لما تطلع النار كده تطلع زي الشعله. ودخان. اذا بيطلع عندنا حراره ضوء ولهب ودخان. نتيجه سبب ايش؟ تفاعل مواد قابله للاشتعال مع الاكسجين، صار عندي حريق. طيب المهندس، هذه الطريقه طب انا محتاجها مرات لما اطبخ لما اشوي. نعم انت محتاجها، لكن تعامل معها بحذر. تمام؟ طيب، 4 عناصر عشان تولع عندنا النار: اكسجين، حراره يعني مصدر اشتعال حراره، وقود، والتفاعل الكيميائي. ايش يعني؟ يعني انت الاكسجين جاي من اكسجين الجو هذا العادي، لو في اكسجين اعرف انه في حريق. لو في مصدر حراره حتى لو بسيط معناته ممكن يسوي حريق. وقود ايش يعني؟ مو شرط بنزين، مو شرط ديزل، مو شرط غاز. الوقود ممكن يكون خشبه، ممكن يكون ورقه. تمام؟ ممكن يكون بلاستيك. وقود يعني ايش ممكن قابل للاشتعال. والتفاعل الكيميائي مع الثلاث عناصر اللي فوق يولد لنا اسمه حراره. واضح؟ تمام. إذا شيل عنصر من العناصر، يعني شيل الحرارة تطفي الحريق، شيل الوقود تطفي الحريق، شيل الأكسجين تطفي الحريق، اكسر التفاعل الكيميائي بين الثلاث عناصر تطفي الحريق. طيب كيف نطفي الحريق؟ شيل واحد من العناصر تطفي الحريق باختصار، يعني خفف حرارة المادة المشتعلة، هتطفي النار ولا مش هتطفي؟ هتطفي. الوقود، انت الحين عندك 3 كراتين، كرتونين ثلاثة، الكرتونة ما قاعد تشتعل، طبيعي حتشتعل الثانية والثالثة، ابعد الثانية والثالثة عنها، تشتعل الأولى لكن الثالثة ما قدرت توصلها فتطفي الحريق. الأكسجين، لو تمنع الأكسجين عن النار المنطقة المشتعلة هتطفي الحريق. تمام؟ إذا أنت أحد العناصر الثلاثة لو شلت منهم أي واحد هيطفي الحريق عندك. تمام؟ طيب لمنع الحرائق من المهم أن نفهم كيف الحريق هو تفاعل كيميائي، تفاعل سريع للغاية، يعني ما يمكن ملاحظته، زي ما أنت الحين بتولع الكبريت على طول النار تطلع، يعني ما تفاعل سريع جدا.
يا مشعل، يعني ذكرنا انه عندنا مثلث الاشتعال، اذكر لي مثلث الاشتعال اللي شرحناه الان باختصار. يلا مشعل. مثلث الاشتعال يا مشعل. شرحنا مثلث الاشتعال او ما يسمى هرم الحريق. ايش هو هرم الحريق يا مشعل؟ مشعل مش معانا. يا مشعل. يلا اذكر لي هرم الحريق، ذكرته قبل شويه. ايوه يا مشعل مش معاي. قبل شويه ذكرته انا، قلنا الاكسجين والوقود والحراره وسلسله التفاعل الكيميائي، قبل شويه ذكرته. اذا انت مشعل فاتح الماي بدون ما تكون معايا ومجبر عليه، انا ما جبرتكم انكم تحضروا شيء وانت مثلا مشغول او عندك شيء طارئ او تسوق السياره، احضر بعدين، المحاضرات مسجله. ماشي؟ نكمل. خلاص ماشي، ممكن عادي غادر وبعدين احضر المحاضرات يا مشعل. ماشي؟ موفق ان شاء الله. طيب زي ما ذكرنا انه في عندنا هرم السيطره او هرم الحريق، هو هرم في غايه الاهميه، بحيث انه عندنا الاكسجين و تمام شكرا الله يعافيك. الاكسجين و آه، الوقود، وايضا عندنا الحراره، بالاضافه لسلسله التفاعل الكيميائي. وهذه الامور الاربعه عندما تشترك مع بعض تجد هناك تفاعل كيميائي يحدث بسببه الحريق. عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
متطلبات خطة الوقاية من الحريق في المنشآت. يعني الآن نحمل كيس وأكثر حالة بنركز فيها دائما الحريق لأنه متكرر. تمام؟ طيب يجب أن تكون الخطة مكتوبة بلغة واضحة ومفهومة. يعني ما تجي تكتب لي خطة مش واضحة، أقول لي والله يا مهندس أنا ما بعرف أكتب خطة طوارئ أو خطة إخلاء. ابحث في النت خطة حريق، خطة إخلاء، خطة طوارئ، خذ من معلومات من هنا ومن هنا ومن هنا، ترى بيطلع لك يعني حاجة واضحة وسهلة وممكن أنت تكون مبدأ لهذا العمل. وأغلب يعني الخطط الموجودة في الإنترنت يعني عادي مسموح لك أخذ منها ونشرها. أن تبقى الخطة في مكان ظاهر وواضح بداخل المنشأ. لازم الخطة تكون واضحة وظاهرة والكل عارف فيها، متاح مرجعيتها للأفراد والإداريين. يجب على قائد المنشأ ومسؤول السلامة في المنشأ إبلاغ الأفراد بأخطار الحريق. لازم يقول لهم ترى في خطر حريق، في مخاطر اشتعال. عند مباشر العمل في المنشأ لأول مرة يتم استعراض كافة الإجراءات التي يجب تعملها في خطة الوقاية. لازم يتم شرحها. يعني أي موظف جديد أو أنت موظف جديد، المنشأ اللي بتقدم نفسها وبتقدم موظفينها لازم يدخل الموظف يقول أنا ترى في خطر حريق. وأي منشأ معرضة للاحتراق، ما في أي منشأ ما في من أي منشأ. تمام؟ إذا خطر الحريق خطر دائم في جميع المنشآت سواء بيوت، محطات، سيارات، أي شيء. تمام؟ طيب ايش تتضمن خطة الوقاية من حمام الحريق؟ قوائم بكافة مخاطر الحريق والتعامل معها والتخزين الآمن للمواد الخطرة ومصادر الاشتعال، أجهزة التحكم، معدات الحماية من الحريق سواء كان في مختبر أو في مكان في حفلات أو شغلات معينة. إجراءات للسيطرة على النفايات سريعة الاشتعال. في نفايات ممكن تكون سريعة اشتعال زي مثلا النفايات الطبية، نفايات خطرة مثل في نفايات مثلا زي تخزين ورق او مستندات، او مثلا زي الارشيف. الارشيف منطقه خطره جدا اللي فيه ورق، لانه ورق قابل للاشتعال. تمام؟ وسريع في مواد سريعه الاشتعال. اجراءات الصيانه الوقائيه ضروري جدا. الصيانه الوقائيه مهمه، عشان كذا موضوع الصيانه ضروري يكون بشكل دوري للاجهزه، المعدات، المنتج الحراره، ذات الحمل الزايد، المكيفات، السخانات، اجهزه الحاسب، المراوح، التدفئه. واسم ووظيفة ورقم جوال كافة الذين لديهم مسؤوليات عن صيانة معدات الإطفاء والإبلاغ والسيطرة على المخاطر. لازم هذه أمور رئيسية تتضمنها خطة الوقاية والحماية من الحريق. واضح إلى الآن؟ نتعمق زيادة؟ نبدأ نكمل نتعمق زيادة؟ جميع واضح؟ ركزوا. واضح؟ واضح. تمام. طيب منع مخاطر الحرائق. جميل. منع مخاطر الحرائق. فهم الحرائق. بدنا نفهم الحريق. ليش نفهم الحريق الآن؟ لأنه لو فهمنا الحريق حنعرف كيف نتعامل معاه ونطفيه. طبعا الحريق والنار مضرات دائما. هل هم لهم ضرر دائم؟ لا. طب نحن نستخدم الحريق، بنطبخ كل يوم، بنسخن شاي كل يوم فيه. النار والحرارة بنطبخ فيها، بنولع فيها اللي بروح البر، حطب وجمر وبسوي شاي على الجمر يعني، وبنشوي. صح؟ يعني نستفيد من النار. يعني ما ممكن والله اقول والله ما ابغى نار. لا، النار مطلوبه. المحركات، النار والحراره والمصادر الحراره مطلوبه. لكن هنا السؤال، هل انا بقدر الغي النار؟ لا، ما تقدر تلغي النار. تقول والله الغي النار عشان اوقف الاشتعال، ما بينفع. عشان كذا التعامل مع الحرائق بالتحكم بها. تمام؟ نتحكم فيها. يعني الان اكثر شيء خطوره انه ايش؟ انا محتاج الشيء هذا ولازم اتعامل معه بحذر. نفس الشيء، يعني انا عارف ان الولد هذا مثلا عمره مثلا 4 سنين 5 سنين ولد وبلعاب وكذا، انا عارف انه لعاب ممكن يسبب لي نار، لكن ابغى اتعامل معه، ابغى اعطيه كل شويه حلاوه، ابغى اراضيه. نفس الفكره، ابغى اعرف الان من هي النار ومن هي الحرائق حتى اقدر اتعامل معها. تمام؟ طيب الحرائق تفاعل كيميائي سريع، يعني التفاعل شفت لما تدخل مختبر تقول والله سوي تجربه كيميائيه، هو تفاعل كيميائي سريع ما بين الاكسجين اللي بنتنفسه. شفت الاكسجين؟ شوف خطر النار انه في اكسجين مواد قابله للاشتعال، يعني مواد تقبل انها تشتعل زي ورق خشب، ومع الاكسجين لما يتفاعلوا مع بعض بينتج عن اطلاق هذا الحريق حراره وضوء. مش الضوء صح؟ وحراره ولهب. شفت اللهب لما تطلع النار كده تطلع زي الشعله، ودخان.
يا صفية ذكرنا انه الاربع نواتج، اذكري الاربع نواتج يلا عشان كنت تتابع معانا، اذكروا لنا اياهم. 4 نواتج الحريق. ذكرنا هناك نواتج للحرائق، وهناك 4 نواتج للحريق. اذكروا لنا اياها يا صفية. صفية معنا؟ لا شرحته الآن وانت موجودة، قبل شوية شرحته. لا طبعا لا. نواتج الحريق 4 ذكرناها يا صفية الآن، إذا معانا جاوب. ليس غاز أكسجين وليس CO2. ذكرناها الآن. قلنا حرارة وضوء ولهب. آخر واحدة إيش؟ باقي واحدة. شكلك مش معاه نهائيا. اللي عنده أشغال ولا شيء أو حاجة طارئة مو شرط إنك تدخل على الزوم وتحضر المحاضرة وأنت مش معاه. إيش استفدت؟ لا ولا أكسجين، ما تستفيد حاجة. إذا أنتم مشغولين وعندكم شيء طارئ أو حاجة ظرف ممكن تروح وتحضر بعدين المحاضرة. ماشي؟ تحضر بعدين المحاضرة، مسجلات كل المحاضرات، واسألني بعدين. بس أرجو إنه ما نفتح الزوم وأنتم على أساس موجودين وأنا بشرح وكأنه ما في أحد. يعني إيش استفدت؟ ما فت أحد في المعلومة، يعني كأنه أحد فاتح بس وما بيسمع حاجة. الله يعافيكم اللي مثلا موجود معايا وكان مشعل قبلها موجود وما هو متابع، او مثلا بسوق سياره وعنده سفر ولا طالع برا في البر ولا في موقع ومشغول فعلي، عادي يغادر. انا ما قلت له لا ما يغادر ويحضر بعدين اللي بيحضر اللي تراه يحضر في اي وقت ثاني. تمام. نحن ركزنا وتكلمنا مع الاداره، ارسلنا لهم على بخصوص تسهيل موضوع الحضور، ونحاول نخليه يومين في الاسبوع بدل 4 ايام ونضغط اليومين، او نخلي 4 ايام ويصير مثلا قبل بشويه على اساس بس ظروف المتدربين والمتدربات بالنسبه للدبلوم. لكن اعيد، احنا الان في محاضره بشرح انا معلومات، ارجو انه لما اشرح معلومه يكون في انتباه، اذا ما في انتباه انا كاني بشرح لنفسي. تمام.
اذا بنطلع لهاب ودخان نتيجه بسبب ايش؟ تفاعل مواد قابل للاشتعال مع الاكسجين، صار عندي حريق. طيب يا مهندس هذه الطريقه طب انا محتاجها مرات لما اطبخ لما اشوي. نعم انت محتاجها، لكن تتعامل معاه بحذر. تمام؟ طيب 4 عناصر عشان تولع عندنا النار: اكسجين، حراره يعني مصدر اشتعال حراره، وقود، والتفاعل الكيميائي. ايش يعني؟ يعني انت الاكسجين جايب اكسجين الجو هذا العادي، لو في اكسجين اعرف انه في حريق. لو في مصدر حراره حتى لو بسيط معناته ممكن يسوي حريق. وقود ايش يعني؟ مو شرط بنزين، مو شرط ديزل، مو شرط غاز. الوقود ممكن يكون خشبه، ممكن يكون ورقه، تمام؟ ممكن يكون بلاستيك. وقود يعني شيء ممكن قابل للاشتعال. والتفاعل الكيميائي مع الثلاث عناصر اللي فوق يولد لنا اسمه حراره. واضح؟
طيب واضح. اذا نحن لما نتكلم عن نواتج الحريق وذكرنا هرم الحريق، سؤال ذكرناه الآن قبل قليل: كيف نبغى نقوم بإطفاء الحريق من خلال الوقود؟ شو بنعمل؟ إيش الطريقة بسموها؟ مبارك، إيش الطريقة يسموها إيش لما بدنا نطفي الحريق بواسطة الوقود؟ شو بسموها؟ لا، طيب لما نبغى نطفي الحريق الطريقة اللي بيسموها لا سلسلة التفاعل الكيميائي، ايش بيسموها؟ تجويع. اوكي ممتاز، تجويع ممتاز. طيب وبالنسبة تجويع الوقود، مش تجويع بالوقود، تجويع الوقود. طيب وبالنسبة لسلسلة التفاعل؟ بالنسبة لسلسلة التفاعل بيسموها كسر سلسلة التفاعل، وبالنسبة للحرارة يسموها تبريد، وبالنسبة للأكسجين العنصر الرابع شو يسموه؟ خنق. والله ما حد متابع. طيب كويس انه جاوبت. طيب
إذا شيل عنصر من العناصر، يعني شيل الحرارة تطفي الحريق، شيل الوقود تطفي الحريق، شيل الأكسجين تطفي الحريق، اكسر التفاعل الكيميائي بين التفاعل بين الثلاث عناصر تطفي الحريق. طيب كيف نطفي الحريق؟ شيل واحد من العناصر تطفي الحريق باختصار، يعني خفف حرارة المادة المشتعلة. هتطفي النار ولا مش هتطفي؟ هتطفي. الوقود، انت الحين عندك 3 كراتين، كرتونه كرتونين ثلاثه، الكرتونه اللي قاعد تشتعل طبيعي انها حتشتعل الثانيه والثالثه، ابعد الثانيه والثالثه عنها بتشتعل الاولى، لكن الثالثه ما قدرت توصلها فطفى الحريق. الاكسجين، لو تمنع الاكسجين عن النار المنطقه المشتعله حتطفي الحريق. تمام؟ اذا انت احد العناصر الثلاثه لو شلت منهم اي واحد حيطفى الحريق عندك. تمام؟ طيب لمنع الحرائق من المهم ان نفهم كيف تحدث الحريق. هو تفاعل كيميائي، تفاعل سريع للغايه، يعني ما يمكن ملاحظته. زي ما انت الحين بتولع الكبريت على طول النار تطلع، يعني ما تفاعل سريع جدا بين الاكسجين والمواد القابله للاشتعال، مما يؤدي الى اطلاق الحراره، ضوء، لهب، دخان. دخان بتشمه ولهب اللي بتشوف لهب، وضوء بتشوف ضوء كده بيعطيك نار. تمام؟ وحراره، حراره الموقع. لكي تكون نيران موجوده يجب ان تكون العناصر الاربعه التاليه موجوده في نفس الوقت. ما يكفي من الاكسجين، يعني لو قللنا الاكسجين شويه ممكن تطفي النار، مش امنعها بالمره للحفاظ على الاشتعال. ما يكفي من الحراره للرفع الى درجه حراره الاشتعال. نوع من الوقود، خشب، ورق، بنزين، وهي نفسها المواد القابله للاشتعال، والتفاعل الكيميائي اللي هو النار. اذا العناصر هذه لو توفرت تشتعل عندنا الحريق. تمام؟ طيب خطة الوقاية من الحريق المسبب، مصادر الاشتعال. أنا عشان أختصر عليكم الموضوع أعرف إنه في عندي إيش؟ مصادر اشتعال. إيش مصادر الاشتعال؟ مصادر اللهب، زي مثلا تجربة كيميائية. تمام؟ بخور، لما نجرب مثلا نولع حاجة معينة أو حريق وهمي، هذا مصدر اللهب مفتوح، صعب جدا السيطرة عليه. الدخان شو بساطته؟ ممكن يسبب الاشتعال كبير جدا. الكهرباء الساكنة، عارفين الكهرباء الساكنة؟ شفتوا لما تكوا ثياب، في ثوب أبيض، ثوب مو في زي بخاخ اسمه فضفاض ولا شيء بيقتل الشحنات الساكنة؟ هذه شهادة الكهرباء الساكنة. هذا خطر، هذا بتسبب اشتعال على فكرة عشان تكونوا بالصورة. يعني هذا خطرتها لو في جنبها مصدر ديزل او بنزين او قريبه منها لا قدر الله، ترى ممكن تشتعل عشان تكونوا بالصوره. انتبه. وفي اكسجين اللي هو في الجو، ترى ممكن تسبب مخاطر كبيره جدا وتشتعل. هذه الكهرباء الساخنه. الاعمال الساخنه زي اللحام، عارفين اللحام اللي بيلحم مثلا بين حديده وحديده لما يطلع شرر، تشوفوه مثلا تعون المحلات، تعون اللي بيركبوا مثلا اللي في المصانع، اللي بيركبوا مثلا لوحات. والقص لما يقصوا مثلا، شفت الماكينه القص؟ القص هذا اللي بيصير قص حديد ولا قص، هذا بسبب شرر. الشرر هذا حار، فالحراره هذه ممكن لو تنزل على مثلا ماده سريعه اشتعال او قابله للاشتعال ممكن تولع لك الدنيا كلها. تمام؟ الاسطح الساخنه، مين يعطيني مثال في البيت على الاسطح الساخنه؟
يلا اعطونا مثال. في أحد معانا يعطينا مثال؟ الفرن الكهربائي صح تقصد؟ خليات. ممتاز ممتاز. المكواية، السخان، الدفاية. طيب احنا أذن المغرب الساعة إن شاء الله 7:30 نرجع بإذن الله تعالى.
I have about 20 years in the fire alarm industry. I've held a variety of responsibilities throughout my career, from direct sales to account management to service department leadership to sales leadership, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion today. So thank you. Back to you, Jim.
Thanks. Steve?
Hey, good morning. I am Steve O'Connell. I'm working out of the conversion office in Seattle. I've been in fire and life safety systems for just about 29 years, with the past 16 here at Convergent. I've worked with building owners and managers creating support agreements for their fire and life safety systems. I have kind of a specialty in healthcare. I do a lot of hospitals and clinics. So yeah, glad to be here. This is going to be fun.
And Dwight.
Hello, my name is Dwight Wills from Building Reports. I'm Vice President of Sales and Marketing. We're a 20-year-old company. In fact, we've been providing our technology to Convergent Technologies since pretty much they started. So they've been using us for their entire life to document their fire and life safety inspections.
Thanks, Dwight. So we'll get started. So as we get started, just for those in the audience, if you do happen to have a question, you've got a feature there on the screen, and we'll allow some time at the end to address those questions, and certainly as many as we can. So when you think about fire alarm system technology, when you compare it to the security industry, the technology within fire, predominantly has been very, very slow, right? It's very slow in developing. I mean, some systems were even DOS-based, I think, up until just a few years ago. But over the last couple of years, when you think about the fire technology, the changes that have happened, you think about multi-criteria detectors that can tell the difference between what type of smoke, is it dust, is it steam? You've got addressable notification appliances, as well, that are really increasing the amount of technologies in that space. Then when you look at the types of technology platforms that incorporate things like mass notification and graphic command systems, it really gets complex, and the technology is really being moved very quickly. And how we test and inspect fire alarm systems, to ensure that they'll work when they're needed and remain compliant, with governing authorities, that's starting changing, as well. And that's really going to be our topic today. So Dwight, when you think about it, the obvious purpose of a fire alarm system is, of course, to make sure that it's going to work when it needs to. It's going to notify the occupants if there's some type of a, emergency that they need to respond to. And it's also required by law that, they're tested, right? And it's up to the building owner to make sure they're staying in compliance with that, with those laws and requirements. So Dwight, the industry's come a long way, since the days of handwritten forms. What are you seeing that's really becoming new to the industry today?
Well, new to the industry today is probably third-party reporting. I'll get to that in a second. You brought up a couple of points there. We started in 2000 basically because we were from the industry and we saw a lot of companies utilizing paper to kind of get around the labor part of the inspection, test, and maintenance. So we wanted to create a system that would allow high-end companies to prove to their customers that they were doing inspection, test, and maintenance labor, and that they were documenting it well. So we created a barcoding system that allowed companies like Convergent to go ahead and easily gather data, very granular data on the equipment and the devices they were actually doing the inspection, test, and maintenance work on. Their system also provided a better method of reporting that data to the customer, providing granular data to the customer if they liked. And additionally, we utilized what was a fairly new or new to the industry product back then called the internet, or the cloud, if you like, to provide that reporting to the customer and to utilize methods to transfer data between a field employee and their headquarters. So it was all kind of groundbreaking stuff back then. We're all very used to it now. But what that has led to is the ability for that reporting to be shared with the local jurisdictions. And that's really where the biggest changes have happened over the last decade, is a group of companies have emerged that are outsourcing a lot of the requirements of the jurisdiction for the fire marshal to gather all that data and provide it to the jurisdiction so the jurisdiction can see very rapidly which particular facilities within their jurisdiction are not in compliance. So that's the primary thing that we see changing in today in inspection, test, and reporting maintenance in the technology.
No, I really appreciate that. Steve or Stephanie, do you have any comments? Steve, you're on mute.
Rookie mistake. The Seattle has a system like this where you go through a company called Compliance Engine, and it is a cost that people have to realize is being borne, and it's $30 per system per year. Additionally, I've seen recently the city of Seattle starting to talk fines to building owners for not filing or doing their testing. So there are some costs associated with that. The other thing I'd mention is this: the BR.com system or buildingreports.com has been a real asset during this time of dealing with testing through COVID-19 restrictions. The ability to handle these reports electronically, but also the ability to pull them up on a Zoom call with a customer and review those. You'll hear me refer to healthcare a lot, but the average fire marshal report may be 2 or 3 pages long, and that satisfies most testing requirements in most industries. That same building, if it was a hospital, will have a 60-page report from buildingreports.com. And the ability to review that in real time, online, no contact with whoever needs to know that has been terrific.
And that's a great point that you brought up there, Steve, because that was the item that I was going to build on this topic, which is, sometimes there are 2 forms of documentation that need to be submitted. One that's submitted through your local having jurisdiction or the fire department, and another to the authority having jurisdiction within the healthcare industry, say it, the Joint Commission, for instance. So you'll really be looking at a couple different forms of documentation. So it's really the same test in 2 different forms based on the requirements from each individual. So just wanted to point that out.
That reminds me of a situation where we were at odds with the timing of some of the reports coming from one of these third-party people. And again, this was healthcare. So healthcare has very specific requirements for when you do a test versus when it was last done. So in this case, it was a quarterly test. It has to be done, plus or minus 10 days, I believe. At the first of the month, that building manager received a report from the third-party certificator saying you are out of compliance. Your report wasn't filed this month. And for 3 years in a row, this happened, and we had to explain to them we can't do it in compliance with them, or you will be out of compliance with Joint Commission. So your choice. We either move the test to where it falls and synchronizes, or they need to just be a little bit more patient and understand the real world of codes. So there is some thought that has to go into it.
Yeah, and then in some cases, you'll see both. In some cases, you'll have to comply with both. It just really depends on the authority having jurisdiction on how they want to see that documentation. So that's an important thing to think about.
Yeah, and some facilities may not have experienced this yet, where the jurisdiction has required their documentation to be provided to them by one of these services. But they're coming, they're spreading quite rapidly. And if your jurisdiction doesn't have it yet, you will have it in the future, very, very likely. To that point, we've actually, at Bill Reports, we provide a solution. We do it a little differently. Like Steve mentioned, there was a cost to file, which that cost is normally passed on to you, the facility or the building owner. We provide a free service to allow that cost to be borne by us, basically, because we primarily tend to use technology to solve that problem, not labor.
Right. Thanks, Steve. I'm going to switch gears here just a little bit. So you think about the service provider, right? So, a building owner, they have a lot of choices and does provide the service. If you're looking at the fire alarm test inspection, it could be a direct office, a manufacturer, it could be a fire alarm dealer, or it could even be an electrical contractor. So if I'm a building owner and I'm looking for a service provider, I guess I'll go to you, Stephanie. What should I be looking for in terms of some of the capabilities they may have?
Sure. Thanks, Tim. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I was a service manager, in the past, and tons of feedback in this area. So there are certainly several layers to this question, depending on the unique attributes of each business, the overall fire life safety goals, and really the local AHJ requirements. So I'll start by talking about the top 3 areas of feedback that I've received from customers over the years. Really, the priorities are surrounded within the critical needs for reliable partners, technical skill set, and response. So starting with reliability, it's critical that the provider, provide to the building owner, and they really select the level of urgency to the building owner. So this is particularly important with communication from the provider and setting the expectations of the relationship. So one example of this would be, really how is a service call placed? Is there a preferred platform for requested service, in order to organize, prioritize, and really track the repair process? For some of the larger business, this is really a key component to managing various fire life safety systems and the status of each of these systems in a break-fix environment, for instance, or used as an inspection deficiency management tool. So the other piece of this is really how does a provider communicate when things don't go as expected? Sometimes the process of troubleshooting critical errors in a system can take more time. So what is the course of action and how is it communicated to a building owner? Really addressing the issue and partnering with the building owner on a fire life safety plan to ensure the safety of the occupants and property are key. So, when we think about technical skill set, really the expectation is self-explanatory, right? In that a building owner expects the provider to be capable and qualified to understand how to properly test, inspect, repair, for your fire life safety systems of all types in your building. So, for example, when it comes to software-based fire alarm systems, we'll be talking about that a bit today. The installing contractor typically holds the rights to the software. So essentially, all software-based fire alarm systems are proprietary. There's elements of testing and maintenance that can be done, but to the extent of the maintenance realm. So when we get into programming, such as adds, moves, or changes, this is when really a qualified professional understands the landscape of such action and works together with the building owner to partner with the install contractor. So really at the end of the day, a building owner is looking for a partner that understands the conditions and processes of how to take care of their systems properly and inform them of when an additional resource is needed to solve an issue. And then lastly, onto response. And this is a critical one. And I know these all sound very basic, but these are critical items of feedback that I've received over the years. Really, a building owner needs to know that a provider has been, that they really have bench strength and staff to respond to emergency service calls in a timely manner. And if an emergency arises at 2 a.m., that building owner needs to know that they can successfully speak to a provider and know that somebody's on the way, or they can talk through a situation over the phone. And this is critical. They need a provider that they can rely on, and this breaks down when an urgent response is not met. So reliability, technical skill set, and response are 3 major areas of concern for building owners, and this is just what I've seen over the years. We can definitely go into more examples with technology and other features, but those are really the 3 highlights that I've seen in building owners on what they look for in a service provider. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well, right? When you think about, fire alarm systems, to your point, with being software-based, all fire alarm systems are proprietary from that perspective. So it's really, is it the service channel or the distribution network that's proprietary? I think it's really what you want to, be aware of, right? To make sure that you're not going down a path where you're going to have a single source provider. So, Steve or Dwight, do you have any thoughts there? Steve, you're still on mute.
I'm trying to be good here. I really subscribe to, and a little preface here, our office in Seattle is a very strong service office. We've done service since we were founded with the original offices probably 18 years ago. And we have people now, or companies that are in their third and fourth 5-year contract with us. And it's because we try to build, and I really encourage people to look for a partner, not just a vendor. Someone you can communicate with, somebody you have trusted, somebody who brings something to the party that helps you understand what you're trying to do to take care of your building. So it's more of a relationship thing and not a transaction. I also see, since I do work a lot in healthcare, there are some great organizations that I see a lot of building engineers and facility managers participate in, and you all know which ones are appropriate to your industry, but ones like BOMA that are fairly general, Building Owners Managers Association, but we work a lot with ASHE, the American Society for Healthcare Engineering, and their local chapters. There's a very strong one here in Washington State, and the point of that is those engineers and facility managers talk to each other like nobody I've ever seen in any other industry, which is a two-edged sword, by the way. So ask help. Ask if you're not happy with the way things are going, ask your peers. They're not gonna steer you wrong. They're gonna tell you, yeah, don't have the suit, or yeah, this is good. Try this. Call that person. Don't sit there, because as Jim started out with here, you are responsible for that building and that documentation. You entrust it to a vendor, but worst case, the vendor's going to get fired. You know, you're on the hook as the building owner for that documentation.
You know, and to build on that as well, Steve, you just put this thought in my mind as well. You know, some feedback that I've received also from just over the years is we're looking for a company that understands how to design, install, and service the systems, because sometimes what you'll find is installing contractors, or even if it's you'll just call it an electrical contractor, you know, down the road when you're servicing the system, there could be, you know, some misunderstandings as far as, you know, the quality of install versus, you know, is this a service issue, and those types of issues can arise. So a company that can understand what that landscape looks like and know how to navigate those waters is an important part, you know, when you're a building owner, and understanding how to get something resolved. Is this something that should have been covered under a warranty versus something that, you know, truly is a service call, that truly is a break-fix situation. So, you know, we certainly do have subject matter experts across our organization that know how to have those discussions, and that's an important point to make too, because this is just an issue that can come up more often than we'd like to see.
No, I appreciate that. Yes. Yeah, it's spot on. So I'm going to jump ahead here a little bit. So, yeah, Steve and you've all mentioned that, you know, the fire alarm industry is very, very code driven, right? Codes can change from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. They can change by occupancy, you know, et cetera. So you look downstream, right? Do you see any, you know, new pending code changes going to come along the way that might affect some of our clients or potential clients? I think, Steve, you can probably start with that one.
Sure, since I'm already unmuted, I'll go first.
There you go. That's kind of why I did that.
Yeah, thank you. Code, again, it is a code-driven industry, and it's really important that people understand which codes they're responsible to comply with, and there are a lot of them. And not just which code, but which version of which code. So as every code comes out, there are always changes, improvements. At least somebody thought it was an improvement when they put it in there. The many jurisdictions now are going to be well along with the 2013 version of NFP 72, which is the fire alarm standard we work to primarily. And that introduced some new things that you may or may not be aware of or doing. And one of those is the concept of the test plan, which is hopefully a collaborative effort between the building owner and the testing vendor to talk about beginning to end what you're going to be testing, and if in many cases the fire alarm is dealing with a lot of auxiliary functions in the building, where does the responsibility of the fire alarm vendor end, and when does somebody else's responsibility begin? This used to be kind of fast and loose, where a fire alarm vendor may test a smoke detector and is observing a door closing in an elevator lobby. By the code, technically, our responsibility must end at that interposing relay. What happens to the door is really in somebody else's court. And that's one of the classic examples they use in the literature is once that door releases, does the door close and latch and seal correctly? Does it even close is really not our responsibility based on the terms qualification or qualified personnel. That becomes an FPA 80 door vendor kind of a thing or an internal thing to the customer. So the reason for this, I think, really is to not allow gaps. If you have a vendor that just looks at the relay and doesn't tell you that the door didn't drop, there was something in the way, the carpet bunched up, whatever, so that you can get that door vendor in to certify your doors, there's a potential for holes in your testing process. So that test plan is mandated now to hopefully avoid those gaps. The fire alarm testing that'll apply to elevator recall, AHU shutdown, all those systems that are affected in the building when a fire alarm system is tripped. Dwight, you had some information on the recalled equipment.
Yes, yeah, a lot of people don't realize that we have a codes and standards manager on staff because we have over 200,000 users. So we believe those 200,000 users have to be represented. That includes convergence customs, etc. But those users need to be represented to the code bodies. And so that's why we have that codes and standards manager. And part of what we provide in our technology is we provide notification of recalled devices, anything that's under recall by a manufacturer, or even sometimes a safety warning or a safety notice, I think they call them, on the extinguisher side. We pick up that information and report that right inside our reporting to the building owners because building owners don't distribute those products. How would they know that there's a product recall? And a lot of the times the recalls aren't great notices in the first place. They don't get to the distributors of the products in some cases. And or it might go to one person at that distributor. So therefore the building owner never ever finds out about that device being recalled. So we felt that was not what the codes intended. The codes intended to notify a building owner of the recall. So we've had a recall, manufacturer recall links in our reporting for many, many years. And so we pushed that with the code councils and they agreed to go ahead and put that requirement in NFPA 72 for recall devices. So if any device is under recall, it's up to the vendor to report that to the building owner. So that's a little bit of a change for NFPA 72 with the latest codes.
I was recently made aware of another change that I hadn't seen. This is in the 2019 edition. So again, you got to know which edition is applicable to your building, where it's located. And this is on the, they're now introducing a temperature test for batteries. So we've always had to do load tests and document that. Now you're going to use a non-contact infrared thermometer, which everybody has in their pocket now because everybody's checking everybody's forehead. This requirement will have you documenting that, and I think either mandatory replacing the batteries on a 3-year schedule, or changing the way that load testing is done too. So find out if that applies to you, that code. And I keep talking about this because it's.
طيب النقاط اللي شرحها مثلا في الايفالويشن سيفتي بورينج كونكتد سيستم هذه من ضمن المتطلبات الكود السعودي للبناء، بحيث انه متطلبات الكود لو تم تفعيل تلك المتطلبات ووضع التشريعات اللازمه من خلال ال NFPA 101 وال NFPA 89 و NFPA 13 لكان هناك الإجراءات الوقائية المطبقة من خلال متطلبات السلامة للمنشآت كانت عالية جدا ويتم تفعيلها بشكل دوري. هناك العديد من المتطلبات، منها أننا يكون أول شيء نقيم مخاطر المنشأة، يعني إذا كانت عندنا منشأة تعليمية أو منشأة جامعية أو منشأة مستشفيات أو منشآت مثل ما يسمى المنشآت الحيوية أو ما يسمى بالمنشآت المتعلقة في مثلا أماكن زي السياحية. أهلا أستاذة، الله يعطيك العافية أستاذة شريفة. أنا أرسلت لك رسالة واتساب وقلت لي حترد عليها، الله يعافيكي. يا ريت طلعتي عليها حتى أبلغك بالنسبة للحضور، يعني ممكن تطلع على الرسالة وخليكي معايا على الزوم. طبعا بلغتك أنا أستاذة شريفة إنه بخصوص الحضور الغالب بيصعب حضورهم خلال الجمعة والسبت، والإشكالية إنه الغالب يعني في موظفين وفي بعضهم على خطوط سفر، وفي بعضهم يعني في خلال فترة الصلاة صعب جدا مثلا يكون معانا. يعني مثلا نحن بناخذ بريك على توقيت الرياض، يعني هو مثلا في ينبع، فبواجه مشكلة أيضا بالحضور. حاولنا نحل موضوع الصلاة ما في إشكالية، لكن إحنا إشكاليتنا في يوم الجمعة والسبت. فنحاول قدر المستطاع لو تقدير الموافقة إنه حضورهم نركزوا ونضغطوا يوم الأربعاء والخميس، والحضور بسيط وعددهم قليل أصلا المتدربين كلهم، وما في مشكلة ممكن نضغطهم خلال الفترة هذه. فإذا في إمكانية تأخذي موافقة من من الأستاذ تركي، بحيث إنه صراحة أنا أغلب وقتي أنا أغلب وقتي صراحة بشرح يوم الجمعة والسبت مع نفسي بأمانة، يعني للأمانة بشرح حتى التسجيل وتكون للناس اللي بدها تحضر تسجيل لاحقا تكون موجودة. تمام. طيب ممتاز 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 ممتاز. طيب الله يعافيك، شكرا شكرا استاذ شريفه. فمثل ما رجعنا عند متطلبات الكود، هناك متطلبات ترجع لل NFPA 101 و NFPA 93 و NFPA 90 و NFPA 70، وهناك متطلبات وقائية تتعلق في ال NFPA 13 و NFPA 97. هناك المتطلبات الخاصة في الحرائق متطلبات وقائية تتعارض مع الإجراءات المتعلقة في السلامة. لذلك نكمل حديثنا في safety powering connected، وبعدها نكمل إن شاء الله.
It's near and dear to my heart in healthcare, because all of our codes, whether it's NFP 75 or 72 or 25 for water-based testing for sprinkler systems, that's all based on what version of NFPA 101 or the life safety code is mandated by CMS, which is the government. Healthcare is always lagging behind the rest of industry. In fact, 3 or 4 years ago, we made a jump in that life safety code from the 2000 code to the 2012 code, and that jumped us in the fire alarm code from the 99 version to the 2010 version. So a lot of things change very suddenly. I'd also point out that while that's happening, you may have a different version of code for the city your building is in and the state your building is in. So always be aware of which one is the most restrictive and document to that level.
There's one item that I just wanted to make a quick comment on. It kind of goes back a little bit earlier in the discussion, Steve, or when you were talking about different functions of a system, and I just wanted to comment on this before we move on. I think it's an important point to make. When you think about a fire alarm system and you think about the sequence of operations, that's a huge topic when you're looking at and deciding on a service provider or a testing agency to conduct a functional test on the system, you know, particularly when we're talking about complex fire alarm systems. It's something that I've seen in the past as well. This is why I just wanted to raise this so that, you know, for anyone on the line, if they hadn't heard that term before, just jot it down, understanding the sequence of operations, because understanding how the system was designed and intended to function, you know, in a sequence of items. You know, Steve, you mentioned elevators, you know, damper functions, doors, things like that. Sometimes there's organizations or, you know, individuals that are running specific properties that might not understand that that's an important part of understanding how to test the equipment properly. And, you know, sometimes incidents can occur when a testing agency doesn't understand how to address that and understand really what that looks like. So just wanted to make a quick comment on that.
That is a great point, because we do see more and more where building managers or facility managers would like, I hate to use the term because it always comes back and bites me, the one throat to choke, where they don't want to deal with a testing vendor for the sprinkler systems, the fire alarm systems, the backflows, the extinguishers. They would like one company to handle all that, so they have a single point of contact, which allows for way better coordination between those trades to make sure everybody's there on the right day together in the right combination. These testing plans are set up to be gap-free. It makes it simpler. You pay a little bit extra for that coordination, but you probably save a ton in the long run. We have one customer that loves us doing that just because they were failing to coordinate them themselves, and the sprinkler company would show up, but the fire alarm company was never notified, and vice versa. So they wind up paying one vendor or the other for showing up and not being able to work. So they put that all on us, and now if we blow that coordination, we get to pay for that. So that's an asset to the building owner.
I think that probably leads as well, I think, into the next topic, right? When you think about inspecting and testing a fire alarm system, you typically need two inspectors, right? You need one inspector out that's testing the devices. You typically have another inspector at the panel. Sometimes it's, you know, a building representative may do that. But when you think about today's technology and the software-based systems that are available today, and more discrete information out and technology at the edge of the system, right? It's really kind of led to, technology-wise anyway, for the ability for a single inspector to really inspect that fire alarm system, right? Where, you know, they would have to carry some type of device that they can activate a smoke detector or a pull station, and they can pull the fire alarm panel or see what's happening at the fire alarm panel from that device. You know, there's nothing in the code that really says you have to have more than one person, you know, tested. There's been a lot of presentations made, I think, to NFPA, you know, as well as the Automatic Fire Alarm Association around the ability for a single inspector to perform a fire alarm inspection. So when you really think about it, do you think that's a safe practice and that'll be acceptable by most of the authorities? I guess Dwight, maybe you can add something there.
Sure. The ability is there, but the question is it a safe practice? We at Building Reports don't believe it's a safe practice, primarily because while you may be able to sound the alarms from a remote device while you're somewhere else in the building and operate the fire alarm panel to an extent, most companies are placing signage out to state and advising people, if you hear an alarm today, we're testing the fire alarm system, so it'll be a false alarm, don't worry about it. So then it comes down to how are you supposed to notify all those people who believe that an alarm going off is actually a false alarm and they don't have to do anything. How do you notify them that actually it's a real alarm? You need to evacuate the facility. And really the only way that I've ever heard of doing that is with bodies, with multiple people. So that normally starts with the person at the control panel, and there have been documented cases where that person at the control panel has saved lives when a fire actually broke out in a building that was under inspection and test, and the panel had been quieted. And so we believe that's the safe practice. We're a little uncertain about a one-person inspection being really safe, just to try and save a little bit of labor cost.
Stephanie or Steve, do you have any comments there? Have you seen that in practice?
Yeah, I'll just, go ahead, Steve.
No. I have, no, your turn.
definitely concur with what Dwight is stating. You know, when we look at from a safety aspect, and we think about, you know, what does the role of a fire inspector look like out in the field? You know, testing duct detectors, smoke detectors, you know, and whatnot. And you know, there's definitely a safety concern with that. And so when we look at, you know, how do we protect our colleagues? How do we make sure that our teams are performing safely? You know, that goes hand in hand, of course, with the building owner. You know, it's going to be in our best interest to make sure that they do have a partner with them out at a particular job site, because we do understand what that looks like and what that risk can potentially be. And the question is, do we want to embark on what that risk looks like? And we don't. We certainly don't want to do that, particularly just to save labor on that. So absolutely concur with Dwight's comments there.
Yeah, thanks. And that kind of, when you start talking about safety, right, it kind of leads into the next question, right, where we're talking about, you know, in a pandemic environment with COVID, right, it's changed the way that we work, it's changed the way that we live, and, you know, in many, many ways. So when you look at, you know, the accessibility to buildings to get in and do that inspection, right, are the authorities allowing us to postpone or push off, you know, inspections? Have you seen any of that? And then how do the inspectors stay healthy, right? So when you think about it, they're going in all these different occupancies, you know, whether it's into a hospital or manufacturing plant.
كيفك يا أستاذة؟ أنا والله نسيت اسمك، معلش لو تكتبين لي اسمك مرة ثانية. طيب ايه استاذ تفضل، انت اللي اكتبي لنا اسمك، بس ذكرينا باسمك. والله ابتسام. ابتسام، انت في الاستثمار صح؟ صندوق الاستثمارات. وين انتوا؟ وزارة الشؤون الإسلامية. الله يحييك. طبعا استاذ ابتسام، نحن كنا اليوم، طبعا انت ما كنت امس معنا صح ولا قبله اعتقد؟ طيب نحن كنا نشرح خلال اليومين هذول عن متطلبات أنظمة الوقاية والحماية من الحريق. وعادة نحن بالنسبة في المملكة أصبح مرجعنا نرجع لمتطلبات اسمه الكود السعودي. تمام؟ الكود السعودي فيه عدة أكواد، من ضمنها كود الوقاية والحماية من الحريق 801. طبعا الكود الحماية من الحريق له مراجع، بيرجعوا مثلا للNFPA 101، للNFPA 13، للNFPA 10. ايش الNFPA؟ هي جمعية الوقاية والحماية من الحريق الأمريكية. طبعا ايش هي كود الحريق؟ يعني مثلا انت بتعرفي مثلا كم عدد المرشات الآلية المفترض تكون في الغرفة هذه او في المبنى. هل لازم احط مرشات آلية ولا لا؟ كم كاشف حريق؟ كم المسافة بينهم؟ ارتفاع الطفاية، ارتفاع جهاز الإنذار، هل محتاج احط كم مخرج طوارئ بالنسبة للعدد، وهكذا. يعني بيعطيك متطلبات وقائية ومحلية عن متطلبات الكود السعودي. طبعا اليوم طبعا زي ما ذكرنا هو إثرائي، بنحاول قدر المستطاع ننسق مع الإدارة إنه يكون عندكم فقط يوم الأربعاء والخميس حتى ما تنضغطوا في الحضور، وتصير خلاص يوم الأربعاء والخميس نضغط البرنامج ويتم من خلاله شرح الدبلوم. تمام؟ نحن اليوم نعرض أحد المؤتمرات، أحد الكونفرنس، المحاضرات والاجتماعات الخاصة في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، وبيشرحوا كيف تفعيل ربط الأنظمة ببعض. تمام. فنحن بس قاعدين نحضر المحاضره وبناء عليها ان شاء الله بعدين لاحقا بيتم وضع خلينا نسموها ملخص وريكومنديشن. فنحن بنتابع بس الورك العمل وبنناقش فيها لاحقا. فاذا ترغب تحضريها احضريها. هي باللغه الانجليزيه وفي ترجمه مش كثير واضحه بالعربي، لكن شيء راجعك تبي تحضريها ما تبي تحضريها. نحن موعدنا في الدبلوم دائما يوم الاربعاء والخميس.
etc. But yeah, how is everybody staying healthy? How are we staying safe in this COVID environment? And what are you seeing?
Go ahead, Stephanie. I've got a lot, so why don't you do it, and I will repeat what you have.
Okay. All right. Pretty brief on this one, but first of all, when we think about the pandemic, I mean, it's definitely touched us all in unique and challenging ways. So really, my first thought on this topic is that our number one desire is to ensure the safety and health of our staff, our customers, our partners, with all the factors that we can control, and that's such as PPE, daily health assessments for our colleagues. So within our daily health assessments, our colleagues answer questions that center around the colleagues' availability to be really fit for duty. So these questions ask our colleagues to take their temperature, answer questions about health conditions that can be indicators of really potentially underlying issues. So we do our diligence to ensure a safe start for the day. And so as for the requirements, that's really going to depend on the authority having jurisdiction, such as your local fire marshal, for instance, as well as the current conditions of your systems. So really, it's a fire life safety risk, or are there minor troubles that can be worked through over time on your system? So you all probably have a sense of what is urgent and what can be planned for at a later time. So we also know that our customers and partners are acting with the health and safety of their staff in mind. So the changes that we've seen in the field are social distancing adherence, more stringent PPE practices, really along with minimal staff needed to support the work on site safely. And some are taking advantage of empty buildings to get work completed timely, while others have to take additional caution and even having weekend work considered to accomplish the tasks needed. So I'll pass it to you, Steve.
That's good stuff. Thank you. One of the things when this began developing early on was, are we going to be, will owners and managers of buildings be given any slack by the authorities having jurisdiction? And the short answer was no. There was very little of that. Most AHAs were requiring testing to continue. I have seen some things where locally there was some delays permitted for public health reasons, but not repairs. The system must be kept running. If the building is abandoned or empty, the system must be kept running. NFPA had published a one-pager on this. The quote I saw is, "Those responsible for buildings should adhere to expected schedules. Systems in abandoned and construction sites should remain operating." And a lot of these buildings were empty. They were A occupancies, B occupancies, E occupancies. So we took advantage of a short window there where all the Seattle schools were empty and they were behind on their testing. We jumped in and did like 20 schools for them, which was a really great thing to put together in a short time, all via email, teleconference, and to not only get those buildings tested, but help keep our staff working. There were a lot of companies that were hurting through this, and I'm really going to talk more about the human angle of this than the technical angle. But I did again near my heart is healthcare. The alphabet soup agencies, CMS, Joint Commission, DNV, really made no provision for delayed testing. It needed to happen on time. So I'm going to give you an example of one where we forged a partnership again with a customer in a very short length of time. I had put together a contract for a customer who was a large state hospital, new contract, first on-site testing scheduled for March of 2020. Well, we all know what happened in March. And many of you have managed through your testing already this year you've done at least an annual, but the calendar tells me that some of you still have your annual coming up and it hasn't been done yet. Some of you are responsible to do not just annuals, but semi-annuals and even some quarterlies. This hospital was on my mind when we were planning this discussion, and I went to my service operations manager, and I give full credit to him for this content. Eddie Pena, he's a wonderful guy, and he got a hold of this contract, and I asked him, give me your impressions. What happened during this process? What was unique about the process? And his comments were, and I have them just as bullet points because they really sink in that way. He had never worked through a more stressful or unsure time, and he's a many-year veteran of sales and service. He was always struck by it was one thing to put his life at risk, but asking others to do the same is a whole lot more challenging. And that really does hit home whether you're a manager of a facility or managing a service department. Balancing that safety, that safety of the colleagues and the customers with our responsibility to fulfill that commitment to the customer. Working with our colleagues to see what they see out there. Are you okay? Is everything going well out there? Then the process is sitting down literally face to face with the customer, mask to mask, depending on what day it was in March, and working through a plan to get everybody there and get everybody safe. The one mechanical thing was the challenge of getting PPE, sanitizer, disinfectant spray to staff up testing crews, to cover millions of dollars worth of testing, and it's not available. So a big challenge. We had a situation in this particular hospital where there was an increase in cases. It's in the news media. The number of cases that were going up. So we suspended testing and had to go back in and work with the customer again and come up with a new plan. And again, it's this partnership and this mutual respect that gets hammered out in tough situations like this. Eddie literally wanted to sit down with this guy and look him in the eye and say, here's our situation. How do we get through this and get you done what you need to be done, have done, and keep our people safe? One thing he talked about just how humbled he was by our staff and our inspectors and how willing they were to go in and do it right and get it done on behalf of the customer. There was even a period of fear when they realized when there was a COVID outbreak in a unit they had recently tested. So everybody on the testing team got tested, and fortunately they all came back clear. So the moral of the story is it can be done. It is difficult. It's I can tell you, it probably wasn't priced that way because there's a whole lot of extra time in working around these things. I would tell you as a building owner, if you haven't been through this, or as we look at a second or third wave, depending on how you determine that, engage your testing vendor early and get a plan in place with contingencies. Make sure if you can do it early. Joint Commission usually doesn't mind if you do it a little early. They're really not happy if you do it late. So work together, collaborate, and build that partnership. We look back at it now and having, I believe, met all of our testing commitments for the last 8 months. We really had our stride. I think we've got this figured out as it stands today. And no one so far in our testing and service department has contracted the virus, at least not due to contact with customer facilities. So
that's great.
Yeah, I have to say, in service sales, you have to understand that my product doesn't bolt to the wall and have wires coming out of it. My product was people, and I exchange people's efforts for dollars, and those people are obviously an incredibly valuable and appreciated asset.
Right, appreciate it. So, Dwight, from a broader perspective, with buildingreports.com, you work with hundreds of companies like Virgin. Do you see any kind of dips in the number of inspections being done, and have we gotten caught up?
We did. We saw, Friday, March 13th, I think, is when most people were notified that they were going to be working from home. The remainder of March actually went pretty good, but there was a lot of news going on in that time, and a lot of associations took efforts, including NFPA, AFAA, NFSA, AFSA, all of these associations that work in the industry put in a lot of effort to make sure that it was understood that what the work that fire and life safety prevention companies do was actually an essential service. And so once that news got out, we did start noticing some state fire marshals actually giving instruction to get back out and inspect. And so what we noticed was March, actually the numbers came in pretty good. April, we saw a dip. First dip we'd ever really seen in usage as a company. And we definitely did see a dip in April as that confusion got carried through. And a lot of companies were trying to figure out how to navigate this new reality. And then in May, we saw it pick back up, not to normal levels, but did definitely pick back up. And then June just crushed it. Everybody went inspecting in June. And we had new records of usage in June. And that's not a month we normally see new records of usage. So the year is not following its historical normals, nor would we expect it to. But we are seeing it pretty much back to normal. We're not going to experience the growth we normally experience each year, but we are still going to experience growth. So it's just not to the percentages we had been experiencing in previous years. We kind of anticipate at this stage that, who knows what the future is going to bring, but at this stage we're anticipating that based on the current usage, that we'll be seeing fairly similar usage next year. So we'll see if that's actually true or not.
Dwight, for perspective, how many buildings do you guys have in your portfolio? How many scans are done on an annual basis?
Oh, you asked me a tough one. We didn't talk about
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We have a couple 100,000 buildings in the, I'm probably wrong with that, in the service. We have a collection of over 350 million individual device records. Per year, we're seeing anywhere between that increase anywhere between.
طبعا هنا بيشرح عادة في حاجة ما يسمى بالربط المباني بمراكز الإطفاء، بحيث إذا في حالة حدوث حريق في مبنى أو إنذار مباشرة يتم الاتصال المباشر. فينا بتبحث عن ما يسمى بكفاءة كفاءة أداء الأنظمة هذه في البلاغات المتعلقة والحقيقية والإلزامية، وهل هناك يستدعي تواجد فرق مثلا في أو مثلا يسموه فاير مارشال في كل مبنى. الفاير مارشال هو عبارة عن شخص يتواجد في مبنى أو موقع معين، يعني عبارة عن شخص مؤهل إطفائيا ومعرفة أبواب الطوارئ ومعرفة كيفية التعامل مع أنظمة الإنذار ومعرفة كيفية التعامل مع أنظمة الحريق وغيرها والإنقاذ. وهذا الشخص يكون عادة يعني في أماكن ومجهز بتجهيز كامل. فهذه الأنظمة التي ذكرناها سابقا بخصوص الربط يا مبارك، ذكرنا أمس النظام هذا. ما هو اسم هذا النظام؟ ذكرنا أمس مبارك. إيش النظام اللي فيه ربط في الأنظمة في المباني مع أي نظام آخر؟ إيش بسموه؟ مبارك معايا؟ مبارك يا مبارك. مبارك يا مبارك مرة الخامسة. مبارك المرة السادسة. مبارك المرة السابعة. مبارك المرة الثامنة. يا مبارك.
And 25 million times the barcode on an annual basis. If I can go back to that point that I was making, in this country, we're seeing things return fairly to normal. In other countries, Latin America has really been hit hard, and a lot of the companies who use our technology down there jurisdiction have not insisted that inspection continues to take place, at least in a lot of the countries we're in. That may not be the same all throughout the entire country. We even have companies over in Asia, and an example I would say is the Maldives. The Maldives is an area that's completely tourist-based, and as tourism has entirely dried up there, work has pretty much stopped in the Maldives. So we see other countries affected much worse than this country in regards to usage.
I appreciate that. It's hopefully it gets a lot better coast. That's all I can say about that. When you think about fire alarm systems, we talk about the technology, right? So there's becoming broader, and broader, right? So you look at expanding them into incident management systems and mass notification systems, and that's certainly why some of the providers and vendors. So if you look at EST, fireworks or hyperspike or awareness, these systems are really becoming complex and they're all integrated and working together. Somewhat along the line where Stephanie mentioned, with the sequence of operations. So, has that changed the way that we test and inspect and service, fire alarm systems now with all the
Jim, I saw you broke up. I'm not now, but I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit here. I didn't catch your question.
Oh, it was really around, you look at the advent of mass notifications and incident management systems and all, those things being, incorporated now into the fire alarm system or becoming part of the fire alarm system. Have you seen any changes there relative to inspections and servicing?
I'd have to say we have not, which has been really disappointing to us because when mass notification became integrated into the code, we thought there would be a large demand to get these systems installed, if not retrofitted, but certainly in new construction because they're required. But we just have not seen the authorities having jurisdiction require that. Excuse me. So at least in our area, we have not seen a big demand for installing and then therefore not testing those. We are geared up for it. We are equipped for it. We're trained for it. I just don't. To my knowledge, I haven't seen it.
Appreciate that. Okay, anything from Stephanie or Dwight?
I think, just to answer a sliver of that question there, it, of course, is going to depend on the employee. The approach is different, as far as, how those test and inspections are handled, considering complex systems. So the expertise level does look different out in the field for the selected provider to handle those types of systems. So, to that end, I've seen a difference. The competition, pool looks a little different based on the expertise of the staff that can support or understand how to approach and test those systems. So that's just a sliver of your question. But, again, from what I've seen, it does piggyback on Steve's comments, but it truly is going to depend on the enforcement of those particular systems and how to test them and whatnot.
Yeah, and on our side, on the technology side, we've gone ahead and provided for those systems to be inspected by putting in the device records as the code requires. Ultimately, we try and always design our systems around the code requirements. So they're all set to go, but I couldn't tell you whether we're seeing additional usage of those device records.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So we're about 10 minutes left, and we'll have a couple of questions here. But when we jump to those, I want to make sure that we hit them. Let's see here. I'll just read it off, and we can respond to it. We have seen fire alarm systems incorporate mass notification, network capabilities, graphic enunciation, among other technologies over the years. What are potential uses of fire alarm and life safety systems for the future? So, what do we see coming down the pike relative to new technologies and fire alarm systems? If I think that, just from my perspective and looking at the industry for so many years, I think it's going to continue, in the advancement of the, graphical enunciations. It's going to the questioner's point. It's really how do you incorporate all these other systems, right? So how do you notify, everyone in the building, no matter what type of risk it is? Is it an active shooter risk? Weather related? Is it fire alarm? So it's really going to be I think the interoperability of all of those different types of systems, and then how do you get that information out? What do you do with that information? So you're seeing a lot of technology with the Internet of Things. I know some of the other panel discussions that we've had here at Insight have talked about a lot of technology around the Internet of Things and how the systems can communicate together, work together with security, with video. So I think there's a lot of changes coming down the pipe there.
طيب، ذكرنا هناك متطلبات للأمن والسلامة. أولاً توفير وسائل أمان، العمل في التجهيزات اللازمة في المصانع وتوفير معدات لازمة للوقاية مثل أدوات الإطفاء، عمل الاختبارات بشكل دوري، عمل الإطفاء بشكل دوري، ومثل أدوات الإطفاء عمل اختبارات بشكل دوري من قبل فنيين مختصين. عندما نشوف حريق يجب عمل قواطع مضادة للحريق والتي لا تحتوي على أي نوافذ، وهذه للوقاية من انتقال الحريق. إلى أماكن أخرى. الحرص على سلامة جميع الأجهزة والماكينات بالمصنع أو بالمنشأ، وعمل كشف دوري لها وصيانتها على الفور. ويجب أن تتوفر الإضاءة المناسبة للعمل. الحرص على الوقاية من الحرارة والضوضاء وما إلى ذلك. الحفاظ على قواعد التخزين والسلامة للحفاظ على المنتجات. ثانيا، برامج السلامة المهنية. ضرورة وجود برنامج لإدارة الشركة أو المصنع لمنع انقطاع نشاطها وحمايتها من تعطل الإنتاج. تمام؟ بسم الله. طيب، ضرورة وجود برنامج لإدارة الشركة. نعم، وجود برنامج لإدارة الشركة أو المصنع لمنع انقطاع نشاطها وحمايتها من تعطل الإنتاج والخسائر التابعة لذلك. توفير بيئة مناسبة للعمل الآمن والاهتمام بجميع الوسائل التي تعمل على تحقيق ذلك. تعريف كل موظف وعامل في المؤسسة والعمل بالإجراءات المتبعة والعمل على تنفيذها بالشكل المطلوب. الحرص على تدريب العاملين بشكل مستمر لضمان جودة العمل. التقليل من التوتر والعبء عند العمل الزائد ومكافأتهم. أولاً، مسؤولية العامل: اتباع التعليمات للمؤسسة التي يعمل بها، والحذر عند تنفيذ المهام المكلف بها. عند حدوث أي خطر يجب إبلاغ صاحب العمل على الفور حتى يتم التخلص من المشكلة. أما مسؤولية صاحب العمل مسؤولية صاحب العمل الحرص على إنشاء مؤسسة مصممة ومراعية لطبيعة العمل. التعرف على مخاطر العمل وتدريب العاملين على تفاديها. الصيانة المستمرة للمعدات. توفير الوسائل اللازمة للعمل والعاملين. التنسيق بين أصحاب المؤسسات وجهاز الدفاع المدني عند حدوث حرائق أو مشكلات أخرى للتعامل السريع معها. مقومات السلامة والصحة المهنية. التخطيط يعتبر من أهم المقومات، ويجب أن يكون سليما وهادفا من أجل حماية المنشآت. التشريع للقوانين والمؤسسات والتي يجب احترامها. تنفيذ إجراءات السلامة على أساس علمي وفني لضمان استمرار المؤسسة. اليوم العالمي للسلامة المهنية هو حملة دولية سنوية لتعزيز بيئة عمل لائقة وصحية وآمنة، ويحتفل بها العالم في 28 من أبريل من كل عام لمناهضة عمل الأطفال. وتهدف الحملة لتحقيق الهدف الثامن من أهداف التنمية المستدامة، وبخاصة الغاية الثامنة من المتعلقة
بضمان وجود بيئة العمل المأمونة والغاية السابعة المتعلقة باستئصال عمل الأطفال. ويشكل العمال الشباب في الفئة العمرية ما بين 15 و24 ما يقارب من 541 مليون عامل، منهم 37 مليون طفل أي 15% من القوى العاملة يعملون في مجالات عمل خطيرة ويتعرضون فيها لما نسبته 40% من الإصابات المهنية غير القاتلة. وتهدف منظمة العمل الدولية إلى إذكاء الوعي بالإبعاد والعواقب المتصلة بالحوادث والإصابات والأمراض المرتبطة بمكان العمل، فضلا عن رغبتها في وضع صحة العاملين وسلامتهم على جدول الأعمال الدولي، وبما يحفز على دعم الإجراءات العملية على جميع الأصعدة. ويراد بالبعد الوطني لثقافة الصحة والسلامة المهنية تعزيز الحق في وجود بيئة عمل صحية وآمنة تحترمها الحكومات وأصحاب الأعمال والموظفون الناشطون في مجال توفير بيئة العمل الصحية والآمنة من خلال نظام يحدد الحقوق والمسؤوليات والمهام ويعلي من أولوية مبادئ الوقاية. أعمال الحفر تحدثنا فيها عدة مرات، وننوه للإخوة الحاضرين لتسجيل تلك المحاضرات إن حضورك لهذا البرنامج الدبلوم المعتمد من بيت الخبرة من جامعات في المملكة العربية السعودية حضورا لهذه البرامج فقط دون وجود تقييم لك أو اختبار أو وجود وتقرير يرسل للمدرب لتقييمك. المدرب اللي هو المهندس فارس الخليلي، الإيميل farskhali@gmail.com، مراسلة المهندس فارس وإبلاغه بأن أريد الحصول على تلك الشهادة فأرجو الاختبار لي، فيتم إرسال اختبار أو تقرير يتم ملئه من قبل المدرب أو المتدربة، ومن ثم بعد ذلك يتم الإقرار إما بوجود أو وجوب محادثة أمام المهندس فارس لعمل اجتماع للتوصل والمفاهمة على بعض النقاط السلامة وفهمها. وهذا التقييم تقييم من خلال المحادثة يتم سؤال المتدرب أو المتدربة عن قدراته في علوم السلامة والصحة والبيئة وإدارة المخاطر والحرائق وغيرها. وهذا التقييم يعد أسلوبا منهجيا لمعرفة المتدرب أو المتدربة بأنهما قد اجتازا فعليا وبالأحق الدبلوم الأمن والسلامة بجدارة، أم أنهم فقط حصلوا على التسجيلات ولم يتم اختبارهم فقط حضورا ودفعا للمال، وهذه تعتبر شهادة لاغية لا قيمة لها. والله يشهد عليك في حالة حصولك على شهادة دون حضور البرنامج بشكل فعلي أو حصولك على اختبار أو تقرير تقدمه للمهندس فارس الخليلي، حتى بناء عليه يتم تقييمك، وبناء على هذا التقييم يتم وضع لك علامة، وبناء على هذه العلامة والموافقة تصدر جهة المنصة شهادة معتمدة. نسأل الله التوفيق والسداد ونتمنى لكم التوفيق دائما. فعلم السلامة علم هام جدا، عبارة عن توفير بيئة آمنة سواء في المنزل أو الشارع أو المؤسسة أو المدرسة أو المكتبة. وعندما ننشر هذه الثقافة وتكون ثقافة السلامة سائدة في المجتمع، تصبح المدن والقرى آمنة مطمئنة بسبب اتباع تلك الإجراءات، باستثناء الحالات التي قد تؤثر على مستقبل البيئة والعمل. وما أصابكم من مصيبة فبما كسبت أيديكم. نسأل الله تعالى رب العرش العظيم أن يوفقنا وييسر أمورنا ويغفر لنا ويستر عوراتنا ويرحمنا، إنك أنت العزيز الرحيم. نتوقف قليلا ثم نعود ونتابع لقاء التقييم فيما يتعلق بربط المباني.
Head on there, Jim. I mean, the only other thing that I can think of is just that self-diagnostic piece, you know, as we look at the system becoming more advanced. But I think, you know, it sounds to me like the root of the question is, you know, how do fire alarm systems and life safety systems, you know, integrate with mass notification systems? What does that look like on a larger scale? I mean, that's a part of the question that I thought that I heard, and it sounds like you get it head on there, Jim.
So we have another question around thoughts on a customer assisted inspection. We kind of talked about earlier. You have 2 inspectors that would go out to a location, and oftentimes the building owner would like to have someone on their staff perform. They would have to carry some type of a device that they can activate a smoke detector or a pull station, and they can pull the fire alarm panel or see what's happening at the fire alarm panel from that device. There's nothing in the code that really says you have to have more than one person, tested, and there's been a lot of presentations made at the NFPA, as well as the Automatic Fire Alarm Association around the ability for a single inspector to perform a fire alarm inspection. So when you really think about it, do you think that's a safe practice that'll be acceptable by most of the authorities? I guess Dwight maybe add something there.
Sure. The ability is there, but the question is it a safe practice? We in Bill Reports don't believe it's a safe practice, primarily because while you may be able to sound the alarms from a remote device while you're somewhere else in the building and operate the fire alarm panel to an extent, most companies are placing signage out to state and advising people to be hearing an alarm today, we're testing the fire alarm system. So it'll be a false alarm, don't worry about it. So then it comes down to how are you supposed to notify all those people who believe that an alarm going off is actually a false alarm. How do you notify them that actually it's a real alarm? You need to evacuate the facility. And really the only way that I've ever heard of doing that is with bodies with multiple people. So that normally starts with the person at the control panel. And there have been documented cases where that person at the control panel has saved lives when a fire actually broke out in the building that was under inspection and test, and the panel had been quieted. And so we believe that's a safe practice. We're a little uncertain about a one-person inspection being really safe, just to try and save a little bit of labor cost.
Yeah, I'll let go ahead, Steve.
No. I have, no, your turn.
Okay. safety aspect, and we think about, what does the role of a fire inspector look like out in the field, testing duct detectors, smoke detectors, and whatnot. And, there's definitely a safety concern with that. And so when we look at, how do we protect our colleagues? How do we make sure that our teams are performing safely? That goes hand in hand, of course, with the building owner. It's going to be in our best interest to make sure that they do have a partner with them out at a particular job site, because we do understand what that looks like and what that risk can potentially be. And the question is, do we want to embark on what that risk looks like? And we don't. We certainly don't want to do that, particularly to save labor on that. So absolutely concur with Dwight's comments there.
Yeah, thanks. And then when you start talking about safety, right, it kind of leads into the next question, right? What we're talking about, in a pandemic environment with COVID, right? It's changed the way that we work, it's changed the way that we live, and in many, many ways. So when you look at, the accessibility to buildings to get in and do that inspection, right? Are the authorities allowing us to postpone or push off, inspections? Have you seen any of that? And then how do the inspectors stay healthy, right? So when you think about it, they're going in all these different occupancies, whether it's into a hospital or manufacturing plant, et cetera. But, how is everybody staying healthy? How are we staying safe in this COVID environment? And what are you seeing?
Go ahead, Stephanie. I've got a lot, so why don't you do it, and I will repeat what you have.
Okay. All right, Mike. Yeah, pretty brief on this one, but first of all, when we think about the pandemic, I mean, it's definitely touched us all in unique and challenging ways. So really, my first thought on this topic is that our number one desire is to ensure the safety and health of our staff, our customers, our partners, with all the factors that we can control, and that's such as PPE, daily health assessments for our colleagues. So, within our daily health assessments, our colleagues answer questions that center around the colleagues' availability to be fit for duty. So these questions ask our colleagues to take their temperature, answer questions about, health conditions that can be indicators of really potentially underlying issues. So we do our diligence to ensure a safe start for the day. And so as for the requirements, that's really going to depend on the authority having jurisdiction, such as your local fire marshal, for instance, as well as the current conditions of your systems. So, really, it's a fire life safety risk, or are there minor troubles that can be worked through over time on your system? So you all probably have a sense of what is urgent and what can be planned for at a later time. So we also know that our customers and partners are acting with the health and safety of their staff in mind. So the changes that we've seen in the field are social distancing adherence, more stringent PPE practices, really along with minimal staff needed to support the work on site safely. And some are taking advantage of empty buildings to get work completed timely, while others have to take additional caution, and even having weekend work considered to accomplish the tasks needed. So I'll pass it to you, Steve.
That's good stuff. Thank you. One of the things when this began developing early on was, are we going to be, will owners and managers of buildings be given any slack by the authorities having jurisdiction? And the short answer was no. There was very little of that. Most AHAs were requiring testing to continue. I have seen some things where locally there was some delays permitted for public health reasons, but not repairs. The system must be kept running. If the building is abandoned or empty, the system must be kept running. NFPA had published a one-pager on this, and the quote I saw is, "Those responsible for buildings should adhere to expected scheduled systems that abandoned and construction sites should remain operating." And a lot of these buildings were empty. They were A occupancies, B occupancies, E occupancies. So we took advantage of a short window there where all the Seattle schools were empty and they were behind on their testing. We jumped in and did like 20 schools for them, which was a really great thing to put together in a short time, all via email, teleconference, and to not only get those buildings tested, but help keep our staff working. There were a lot of companies that were hurting through this, and I'm really going to talk more about the human angle of this than the technical angle. But I did again near my heart's healthcare, the alphabet soup agencies, CMS, Joint Commission, DNB, really made no provision for delayed testing. It needed to happen on time. So I'm going to give you an example of one where we forged a partnership again with a customer in a very short length of time. I had put together a contract for a customer who was a large state hospital new contract. First on-site testing scheduled for March of 2020. We all know what happened in March. And many of you have managed through your testing already this year. You've done at least an annual, but the calendar tells me that some of you still have your annual coming up and it hasn't been done yet. Some of you are responsible to do not just annuals, but semi-annuals and quarterlies. This hospital was on my mind when we were planning this discussion, and I went to my service operations manager, and I give full credit to him for this content. Eddie Pena, he's a wonderful guy, and he got a hold of this contract, and I asked him, give me your impressions. What happened during this process? What was unique about the process? And his comments were, and I have them just as bullet points because they really sink in that way. He had never worked through
عندنا متطلبات خاصة في الأكواد المتعلقة بالربط بالأنظمة. كم كلنا ذكروا قبل قليل. مبارك. ذكر الآن بالنسبة لأنظمة الربط الخاصة في ايه ممتاز. ايش أنظمة الربط؟ في عندنا كود لازم نرجع له في أنظمة الربط، كود مهم جدا. ايش الكود NFPA اللي له أنظمة الربط اللي بنرجع له بشكل مباشر؟ نعم، كود NFPA الخاص في ربط الأنظمة، اللايف سيفتي كود، يسموه NFPA كم؟ قبل شوية ذكروه. هل أنت متابع معنا يا مبارك ولا لا؟ وين متابع يا مبارك؟ يعني ما في أبسط. الكود اللي هو NFPA 101، كود NFPA 101 اللي هو اللايف سيفتي كود، وهو كود مرجع عام لسلامة الحياة، بيسموه كود سلامة الحياة، وهو الكود المتعلق في تأسيس نظام سلامة عام متعلق بالإكزيت دور ومسارات الهروب، وأيضا كيفية ربط الأنظمة وحماية المنشآت وحماية المباني وربطها في الأنظمة المتعلقة. يوضح كيفية ربط الأنظمة وأهميتها بربط الأنظمة مع المصاعد، يوضح أهمية ربطها مع أنظمة التكييف، يوضح أهمية ربطها مع أنظمة سحب الدخان. هذا اللايف سيفتي كود. اللايف سيفتي كود من أهم الأكواد ومراجع NFPA المتعلقة في أنظمة الربط وسلامة الحياة. فمواضيع اللايف سيفتي كود والNFPA هنا يتم مناقشة أهمية الربط، وفي حالة الربط ما بين نظام ونظام، أو مثلا بين مركز ومركز، أو يتم محاولة ما يسمى بربط الأنظمة في المباني بأقرب مراكز الدفاع المدني، فيعتبر نظام في غاية الأهمية. لذلك هذا النظام هو نظام مستحدث يتم مناقشته بقيمة هذه الأنظمة، وهل هي مجدية ولا غير مجدية، وهل يتم فعلا الإبلاغ الصحيح لهذا المشكلة، بحيث أن الأنظمة الخاصة في الربط لا تتحدث عن كيفية الإدارة. يعني مثلا عندك ال FBA 72 ما يتحدث عن هو يتحدث بشكل عام عن السموكينج ديتكتور، الارم ديتكتور، الهيت ديتكتور، وموضوع الربط مواضيع مختلفة جدا. يعني مثلا الآن أنا مثلا على سبيل المثال في دول بتربط مثلا نظام الإنذار ونظام الإبلاغ، ما يسمى خلينا نسميه أوضح نظام الإبلاغ، بالربط مع جهات غير مراكز الدفاع المدني. على سبيل المثال تحتاج ربطها مثلا مع الإسعاف، أو ربطها مثلا مع هيئة الطيران المدني، أو ربطها مع سلامة الطيران، أو ربطها مع مثلا قوات أمنية معينة. فالربط هنا لا يتحدث عنه أكواد أخرى، الربط هنا يتحدث عنه اللايف سيفتي كود، وهو مكتوب لحماية الحالة. على سبيل المثال أيضا هناك بعض اللايف سيفتي كود في عندهم فرق للإطفاء، فرق للدفاع المدني، فرق للإسعافات الأولية، فرق للإنقاذ، فرق للتعامل مع المواد الخطرة. هذه الفرق لا تعتبر من ضمن مرات البرمجة، ولا يتم حسابها بالحسابات البرمجية أو الحسابات، هذه يتم إدارتها من خلال لايف سيفتي كود. طيب سألنا هنا مبارك اللايف سيفتي كود انترناشونال مهندس. لايف سيفتي كود نعم هو دولي، نعم تابع للNFPA وهو مرجع للكود السعودي. مهندس فارس، هل يختلف دولة لدولة أخرى؟ لا، في المملكة نشتغل على غالبا الNFPA 99.9999. وهل في اختلاف من الأوشو والنيبوش؟ الأوشو والنيبوش شيء مختلف تماما عن الNFPA. اللي بنتكلم عنه الآن عن الNFPA، أكواد الNFPA هي أكواد متعلقة في أنظمة الحماية والوقاية من الحرائق. أما بالنسبة لأوشا ونيبوش لا تقارن الأوشا بالنيبوش، ما لها علاقة. النيبوش هو اختبار بريطاني، اختبار كيف أنت مثلا تبي تختبر وتثبت جدارتك في السلامة والصحة بالمنهج البريطاني، كيف بدك تثبت وتروح تختبر اختبار اسمه النيبوش بورد. مثلا كيف بدك تثبت انك انت شاطر في لغة برمجة معينة، تختبر مثلا في سيسكو، في شغلات في النتورك، في الشبكات، في امور IT. نفس الفكرة، النيبوش هو عبارة عن اختبار فقط، تمام، ليست معايير وليست مواصفات. الأوشا جهة حكومية زي وزارة العمل الأمريكية، وزارة الموارد البشرية عندنا في المملكة، في عندها إدارة اسمها إدارة السلامة. نفس الفكرة، الأوشا تابعة لوزارة الموارد البشرية الأمريكية، وتحتيها مباشرة بيجي إدارة السلامة والصحة الأمريكية. هي بتضع معايير وأنظمة، لا يوجد مقارنة، زي كأنك أنت بتقارن مثلا الآن سيارة بثلاجة، ما في مقارنة. هذا شيء مختلف عن البتاتا، المقارنة خاطئة. سبب المقارنة اللي بتلاقيها في الإنترنت أو بتلاقيها في مواقع التواصل، إنه زي لو أنت حضرت معي دورة الأوشا بتفهم النقطة هذه، لكن عموما نشرحها. الأوشا وكلمة الأوشا والنيبوش زي البراند، يعني زي كأنك تتكلم عن ماكدونالدز، برجر كينج، ستاربكس، يعني زي حاجة كده براند، اسم جوتشي مثلا، برادا ملابس مثلا غالية جدا، حق أقل بلوزة حقها 10,000 ريال. فهذه مثلا براند، هو أخذ السوق بهذا البراند. المشكلة الشرق الأوسط لأنه لا يوجد به معايير، فهم يعني بأي حاجة أمريكية بريطانية بلصقوا فيها. فنحن لصقنا للأسف في الفترة الحقبة الماضية في الأوشا، والآن بنلتصق في النيبوش، وبنرجع للأوشا وبنروح للنيبوش وبنروح وبنظل نحن ايش مرتبطين في هذه الأنظمة الموجودة. فلا يوجد ربط. الربط بين الجهات إذا بدك تربط بشكل صحيح، في جهة منظمة اسمها المنظمة الأمريكية اسمها HSE، منظمة بريطانية بتضع التشريعات البريطانية HSE، تمام، اللي هي إدارة السلامة والصحة البريطانية، زي هيئة تعتبر. هذه تقارن بالأوشن، مش الأيوش كمان، هذه تقارن بالأوشن. تمام. وهناك أيضا منظمات كثيرة و يعني مناهج كثيرة جدا يعني في بريطانيا، كل هذه يعني هدفها في الأول حماية بشرية، وهدف ثاني طبعا تسويقي وربط الدول الكثيرة كونها لا يوجد عندها أي معايير، فنحن مربوط عندنا هذه المعايير. إن شاء الله وضحت يا مبارك. النقاط اللي شرحناها، ال NFPA هي أكواد الأنظمة وقاية حماية الحريق، ما لها علاقة في الأوشن نيمش. الأوشن تدرس السلامة والصحة في بيئة العمل، إدارة اسمها إدارة السلامة والصحة في بيئة العمل. تمام. طبعا احنا هنتوقف الآن يا مبارك، نلقاكم إن شاء الله الأسبوع القادم بإذن الله تعالى. في حالة وجود أي استفسار أو معلومة تواصل معنا، نحن في الخدمة أول بأول. لقيت معلومة مثلا ما فهمتها، بحثت في النت للعلم يعني يا مبارك، المعلومات اللي بتلاقيها في مثلا زي أو جروبات التليجرام في مواقع معينة، يعني غالبا تلاقي المعلومة مش موثقة وليست صحيحة، أو تم أخذها من جوجل أو من مواقع بحث بتلاقيها ليست لها مرجع حقيقي، يعني مثلا كوبي بيست. لكن المرجع الحقيقي دائما بالمواصفات التي وضعوها هذه الدول زي الأوشا والنموش. فاستفسر أي سؤال محتاجه في أي وقت كان، برحب فيك في الجروب في الزوم في أي وقت. تمام. أنا موجود هنا في خدمتكم خلال فترة الدبلوم الأمن والسلامة، وإن شاء الله نحن بلغنا الإدارة نراجع موضوع الحضور، يكون الحضور فقط خلال يومين بقدر المستطاع، لأنه صراحة 4 أيام بحسها ضغط على الإخوة والأخوات معنا في برنامج الدبلوم، ونحاول نخليها يومين قدر المستطاع، ونضغط هذه اليومين نخليهم فقط يوم 4 وخميس، حتى تكون في معلومة وسهولة في الحضور، ولا يكون في ضغط على المتدربين أو المتدربات. أو إذا بتحب يا مبارك نخليها 4 أيام ما في مشكلة، قول. مبارك. ممتاز ممتاز، خلاص ماشي، ممتاز جدا. نحن ننتظرك إن شاء الله يوم الأربعاء القادم. نسأل الله التوفيق والسداد، ونحن في الخدمة في أي وقت. شكرا لك يا مبارك، وشكرا للحضور المسجلين لهذه الدورة أو الحضور المسجل الذي يحضر التسجيل. نشكر لكم متابعتكم اليوم لهذا البرنامج. اليوم يعتبر اليوم الثامن في دبلوم الأمن والسلامة. بالتوفيق إن شاء الله.
Balancing that safety of the colleagues and the customers with our responsibility to fulfill that commitment to the customer. Working with our colleagues to see what they see out there. You know, what are you okay? Is everything going well out there? The processes of sitting down literally face to face with the customer, mask to mask, depending on what day it was in March, and working through a plan to get everybody there and get everybody safe. The one mechanical thing was the challenge of getting PPE, sanitizer, disinfectant spray to staff up testing crews, you know, to cover millions of dollars worth of testing, and it's not available. So a big challenge. We had a situation in this particular hospital where there was an increase in cases. It's in the news media. The number of cases that were going up. So we suspended testing and had to go back in and work with the customer again and come up with a new plan. And again, it's this partnership and this mutual respect that gets hammered out in tough situations like this. Eddie literally wanted to sit down with this guy and look him in the eye and say, here's our situation, how do we get through this and get you done what you need to be done, have done, and keep our people safe. One thing he talked about just how humbled he was by our staff and our inspectors and how willing they were to go in and do it right and get it done on behalf of the customer. There was even a period of fear when they realized when there was a COVID outbreak in a unit they had recently tested. So everybody on the test a second or third wave, depending on how you determine that. Engage your testing vendor early and get a plan in place with contingencies. Make sure if you can do it early. Joint Commission usually doesn't mind if you do it a little early. They're really not happy if you do it late. So work together, collaborate, and build that partnership. We look back at it now and having, I believe, met all of our testing commitments for the last 8 months. We really hit our stride. I think we've got this figured out as it stands today. And no one so far in our testing and service department has contracted the virus, at least not due to contact with customer facilities. So
that's great.
Yeah, I have to say, in service sales, you have to understand that my product doesn't bolt to the wall and have wires coming out of it. My product is people, and I exchange people's efforts for dollars, and those people are obviously an incredibly valuable and appreciated asset.
All right, appreciate it. So, Dwight, from a broader perspective, with buildingreports.com, you work with hundreds of companies like Convergent. Do you see any kind of dips in the number of inspections being done, and have we gotten caught up?
We did. We saw, say, Friday, March 13, I think, is when most people were notified that they were going to be working from home. The remainder of March actually went pretty good, but there was a lot of news going on in that time, and a lot of associations took efforts, including NFPA, AFAA, NFSA, AFSA, all of these associations that work in the industry put in a lot of effort to make sure that it was understood that what the work that fire and life safety prevention companies do was actually an essential service. And so once that news got out, we did start noticing some state fire marshals actually giving instruction to get back out and inspect.
طيب الله يعطيكم العافية جميعا. آخر ما سنشرحه اليوم هو إجراءات أعمال حفر في
سطح الأرض.
ألو. طيب ضرورة القيام بتقييم المخاطر التي ينطوي عليها موقع العمل بمعرفة مين؟ بمعرفة الشخص أو الأشخاص المختصين. ضرورة معرفة كل المخاطر الموجودة تحت الأرض، أي المواسير والكابلات الكهربائية، وتحديد موقعها وأرضها إذا لزم الأمر. في حالة دخول أفراد إلى حفرة يتم إصدار تصريح بدخول مكان معلق إذا كان المكان ينطبق عليه تعريف المكان المغلق. ضرورة التحكم في التحرك فوق الأرض والحيلولة دون حدوث انهيار، وذلك عن طريق عمل دعامات وانحدارات ومصاطب إلى آخره حسب ما يكون مناسبا. ضرورة مراقبة الظروف البيئية بصفة مستمرة لمتابعة أي تغيير في ملاحظة عند الشروع في حفر بعمق يزيد عن 20 بوصة، فيجب اللجوء لمختص حتى يقوم بتحديد شكل تلك الحفرة. أما بما يتعلق في الأمان في المركبات فهو موضوع شامل لا يمكن الحديث عنه الآن. نلقاكم بإذن الله يوم الأربعاء القادم. نسأل الله التوفيق والسداد للجميع، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.